Man accidentally falls into a barrel of chemical waste and receives a severe burn that instantly engulfs his entire body. By the time he struggles to crawl out, his body is already eroded beyond recognition, and the excruciating pain causes Melvin to writhe on the ground. But instead of helping him, onlookers surround Melvin and laugh heartily at the scene. A nearby patrolling police officer sees the crowd gathered and quickly walks over to investigate. Unexpectedly, as soon as the officer touches Melvin's skin, his hands are instantly engulfed in flames. The sight horrifies everyone present. Unable to bear the pain any longer, Melvin is forced to flee the scene. At this moment, Melvin's body also begins to burn, leaving behind a trail of erosive marks wherever he walks. Upon returning home, Melvin jumps into the bathtub to try to cool himself, but things only get worse as the cold water begins to boil in an instant. His arms continue to swell, and clumps of his thick hair fall out at the mere touch. Melvin quickly gets out of the bathtub and looks in the mirror, only to find his face has become even more bizarre. But the nightmare isn't over yet, as Melvin's entire body begins to mutate, with every part swelling at a visibly rapid pace. After a painful struggle, he finally transforms into a towering monster standing 2 meters tall. To avoid his mother seeing him like this, Melvin has no choice but to leave the house. And the first thing he does once he gets out is return to the gym where he used to work out to get revenge on those who bullied him. And the first to suffer is the gym owner who exploited him. Completely unaware that danger is approaching during his training, the toxic avenger rushes forward and pins him down, then pushes the gym equipment to its limits. To avoid scaring others, the toxic avenger covers the gym owner's horrific condition with a mop. Next in line is the woman who was about to enjoy the sauna. Just as Wanda is relaxing, the toxic avenger, now wearing a burlap sack, suddenly appears. Wanda thinks he is just her prank-loving boyfriend, but when she pulls the sack, she is shocked, and Wanda's death is particularly brutal. Wanda was pinned by the toxic avenger on the extremely hot machine, as it was her actions that led to his monstrous transformation. It turns out that not long ago, Melvin was just a janitor at the gym. Although he was born with a mental deficiency and was not handsome, he was hardworking and diligent, but because Melvin had a creepy appearance and always seemed clueless, a group of gym customers constantly bullied him. One day, these people came up with an even more perverted idea after discussing among themselves. They deliberately made the fair-skinned and beautiful Julie approach Melvin, say some flirtatious things, and arranged to meet him alone in a secluded place. He had never been in a relationship in his 28-year life. Melvin couldn't resist such a temptation. He eagerly followed Julie's instructions, put on a pink tutu, and excitedly headed to the meeting place. However, when Melvin arrived at the location, he found it completely dark and could only hear Julie's voice. When the lights suddenly turned on, Melvin realized that the Julie in his arms was actually a sheep. He was surrounded by a large crowd of onlookers, all there to laugh at his expense. Overcome with shame at having humiliated him once again, Melvin just wanted to leave as quickly as possible, but the crowd followed him, continued to mock him relentlessly, and pushed him to the edge of the abyss. Melvin had no choice but to jump out of the window, only to land on a truck full of chemical waste parked below. Melvin fell straight down, in a barrel of toxic sludge, and that's how he ended up in this horrific state. After taking care of the miserable Wanda, Melvin just wanted to relieve himself on the side of the road but accidentally stumbled upon a few thugs harassing a police officer. Although his appearance had changed, Melvin's good nature remained intact, so when he saw that they were about to castrate the officer, Melvin appeared just in time, grabbed Cigar Face and threw him away. The sudden appearance of the monstrous creature terrified the thugs, making their faces pale. Then Melvin picked up 2 of them as if they were little chicks, and effortlessly pulled their hair with a gentle tug. Still unwilling to retreat, Cigar Face tried to fight back, but Melvin taught him a lesson with a series of punches. Seeing this, one of his friends rushed to help, only to almost break his own bones with a single punch. Another thug, who knew little primitive combat, was also thrown several meters away by Melvin with a single movement of the monkey's paw. And finally, Melvin used the same move to throw the Cigar Face in the trash can as well. Witnessing the brutal methods of this monster, even the officer in the trash heap was completely terrified. But Melvin did not hurt the officer. Instead, he returned all the fallen items to him and even gently helped him get up from the ground. At the police station, the officer was still trembling. When he was interviewed by the media, he narrated his encounter honestly. The story of the monster saving a police officer quickly spread throughout the small town, but Mayor Bill Judy was furious about this because these 3 thugs were actually his men. It turned out that the mayor was secretly using his position to conduct suspicious and illegal transactions. To ensure that the monster did not disrupt his operations, he decided to secretly arrange for Melvin to be arrested. Meanwhile, after some hesitation, Melvin decided to go home and confront his mother. However, as soon as he opened the door, his mother closed it in fear, which made Melvin feel somewhat frustrated. With nowhere else to go, Melvin wandered to a junkyard full of chemical waste, found a small shed, cleaned it up a little and settled down temporarily. But soon after, it happened another armed robbery in the city in broad daylight. Several thugs robbed a restaurant, not only looting the cash register and the customers' money, but also planning to assault female customers and the owner's wife. A man, unable to stand it any longer, came forward and begged the thugs to let everyone go, offering himself as a hostage, but Leroy returned fire, and after that, he shamelessly claimed that it was self-defense. And seeing the fear in everyone's eyes made the thugs even more excited. Frank set his eyes on a beautiful blind woman named Sarah. Leroy not only shot Sarah's guide dog, but Frank also prepared to assault her right there in the restaurant. At the critical moment, Melvin suddenly appeared in the restaurant, grabbed Frank and threw him 100 meters away, and with a swift kick sent Leroy flying. As well, Frank got up again and launched a series of punches at Melvin, but they had no effect on him. With just a slight twist, Melvin dislocated Frank's arm. The terrified bystanders quickly fled the restaurant. Then Rico, who was hiding behind the cash register, rushed into action as the leader of the gang. Rico was indeed smart. While launching his attacks, he skillfully dodged Melvin's blows and even landed a direct kick on Melvin's weak spot. If it weren't for Melvin's enhanced and mutated body, that kick might have decided the fight. Rico knew very well that 2.5 years of his martial arts training was no match for Melvin, so he had no choice but to pull out his trump card. And when it was taken out, he grabbed a katana from the wall. While Rico might be a serious threat to a normal person, he was no match for the mutated Melvin. In the end, Melvin simply lifted Rico up and threw him into the kitchen. Melvin intended to finish Rico off, but Leroy, who was feigning death, attempted a surprise attack. However, Leroy was quickly caught by Melvin, who pinned him to the table with one hand and eventually turned him into a strawberry milkshake. Rico's fate was worse. Melvin held his hands tightly and dragged him into the deep fryer. To prevent Rico from twisting, Melvin tied him tightly to the fryer with a steel pipe. Amidst Rico's desperate pleas, Melvin dipped his hands into the boiling oil and held them there until Rico completely lost consciousness. Just as Melvin was about to leave, a sudden idea occurred to him, and he threw Frank into the oven. By the time Melvin left the scene with Sarah, the police had arrived, only for Frank to be seen. To find the kitchen in a terrible state at that moment, Melvin had already brought Sarah back to her home. Curious about what her savior looked like, Sarah asked to feel Melvin's handsome face. Not wanting to scare him, Melvin lied, saying that he had a lot of pimples. Then Sarah mentioned that she could read palms, so she grabbed Melvin's thick hand. "You will get a lot of good things in the future. You will become a very important man." Maybe because of Sarah's words, Melvin decided to do good deeds until the end. He was either fighting criminals or on his way to fight criminals. Thanks to his efforts, the crime rate in the city decreased, but that's not all. Whenever anyone needed help or was in danger, Melvin was there to lend a helping hand, whether it was helping an old lady cross the street, opening a jar for a woman who couldn't manage it, or even taking care of children. There was nothing he couldn't do. Thus, Melvin, transformed from a monster that everyone wanted to kill, turned out to be a hero who protected the city. Even his handsome face was printed on t-shirts, and his legend spread to every street and alley. However, the prison soon filled up because there were no more almost any criminals in town, thanks to him. But Mayor Bill Gowdy couldn't sit still much longer. If this kept up, there was nothing he couldn't do. Not only would his business be damaged, but even the city's police officers would be out of work. So to solve this problem, Bill Judy teamed up with Cigar Face, who had been beaten by Melvin before, and planned to finish Melvin off once and for all. Cigar Face gathered a few thugs and surrounded Melvin. Armed to the teeth, they were full of arrogance, but Melvin easily thwarted their attack with one move. In the end, all the thugs perished with their own weapons. A barrel of chemical waste completely changed Melvin's life. He may have become bald and ugly, but he also became stronger. After 28 years of being single, even Melvin found love. Sarah, the woman Melvin saved at the restaurant, fell hopelessly in love with him. Although Sarah knew that Melvin had an unusual and shocking appearance, she moved in with him in the chemical waste dump. They renewed their love nest together and lived happily ever after. Probably because Melvin was too busy falling in love and had no time to fight crime, the city's delinquents started acting up again. These two guys were really crazy. They didn't even spare an 80-year-old woman. Bozo and Slag beat the old woman mercilessly with their stick and then stole her car. But as they were happily driving away, that familiar figure suddenly appeared in front of them, and seeing it, Bozo and Slag immediately pressed on the gas, intending to run over Melvin. But Melvin jumped on the roof of the car. Realizing that falling into the hands of this monster meant certain death, Bozo and Slag swerved the car violently, trying to get rid of him, but Melvin clung to the roof like a stubborn leech, freeing his right hand, strangling Slag to death on the spot, then opened the door, throwing Slag's body out of the car. After that, Melvin climbed into the passenger seat and began to struggle with Bozo to control the steering wheel. The car swerved violently, causing several accidents, before finally losing control and falling down a 100-meter-long hill. After a powerful explosion, the car caught fire, and Bozo was completely burned. However, Melvin emerged from the wreckage completely unscathed. After that, Melvin went to a dry cleaner and found an elderly woman there. He picked her up without hesitation. The woman pleaded vehemently, insisting that she had done nothing wrong, but Melvin pushed her into the washing machine. As soon as the washing machine was turned on, it started spinning at high speed. Within moments, the old woman was thoroughly cleaned. Melvin then put her under the dryer. By the time the dry cleaner returned, the woman had turned into a dry crust. But when Melvin returned to the landfill, he was filled with guilt. He confessed to Sarah that he had done a terrible thing today. He had killed an innocent woman. He hadn't wanted to do it, but he couldn't control his urge to kill. Fearing that he might hurt Sarah one day, Melvin urged her to leave him, but Sarah refused to go. Sarah came up with an idea. They could move away from the crowded city to a quiet place where they could live in peace. That way, Melvin might be able to control his desires. So early the next morning, they packed their bags and left town. When Jody heard about it, he said that the monster hero had killed an innocent old woman. He decided to use this as an opportunity to publicly get rid of Melvin. This time, no one objected, but soon the chief of police delivered some bad news. It turned out that the old woman was not innocent at all. She was a trafficker who kidnapped women and children. It seemed that Melvin had accidentally eliminated a bad person. However, when he was interviewed by the media, Jody hid the truth. Determined to get rid of Melvin, Jody even called in the National Guard. After several days of searching, they finally found Melvin and Sarah on a farm. When the news spread, the townspeople flocked to the scene to witness what was going to happen. Melvin's tent was completely surrounded, with the National Guard ready and waiting to pull the trigger at any moment. With such overwhelming forces, even the great Melvin might not survive death. The townspeople who witnessed this were extremely worried, as they clearly did not believe that their hero would kill innocent people. The people who Melvin had helped in the past began to come forward and beg for mercy, hoping that Jody would show tolerance and save their hero. But despite their sincere pleas, Jody remained steadfast. He grabbed a megaphone and shouted at Melvin, ordering him to come out and face death. When Melvin came out of the tent, Jody immediately gave the order to attack, but at that moment, the townspeople rushed forward, standing in front of Melvin, and tried to use their bodies to block the soldiers from shooting for safety. Melvin urged them to leave quickly. When he saw this, the soldiers began to hesitate. The moving commander lowered his weapon, and the soldiers followed him, drawing their guns. But even at this point, Jody was still unwilling to surrender. He fired a direct shot at Melvin, but the bullet had no effect on him. As Melvin advanced step by step towards Jody, no one at the scene made any move to stop him, because they all knew that Jody was not a good person. Facing death, Jody tried to bribe Melvin, but Melvin responded by tearing his organs apart. The biggest criminal in the city was immediately executed, and the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. In the days to come, Melvin would continue to protect the city as the heroic monster.